Welcome back to the Webby and O'Neill channel, and it's the end of the road. Not for us, but Manchester United's Premier League season. Get involved in the chat as ever, Reds, because we do want to discuss some of your comments throughout today's video. But what's your overall thoughts? I've heard a lot of fans online, people we actually speak to are Manchester United fans, and a lot seem to agree it's been a humiliating season. But what's your overall thoughts?
Well, I can look back at the season and I can give 100 excuses. 100 excuses. But it's not excuses I'm going to give. We all know a lot of the problems, injuries, players, attitude, everything else like that. But put that aside, you have to look at the season in its entirety. And 55 goals scored and 58 goals scored against us. That is not acceptable. That is poor. But when you look at the season throughout, I think I looked at that first loss there at Spurs. Okay, we should have been winning at half-time and been out of sight, and it just got worse. I look at December. December was terrible. That was the worst month for Manchester United. Newcastle got beat 1-0 away. Bournemouth 3-0 at home. That was bad. I mean, really, really bad.
I think we capped it off as well, getting beat to Nottingham Forest. Was it a New Year's Eve or?
Yeah, but
was it 2-1 in the end?
Yeah, 2-1, but you're missing West Ham. Got beat by West Ham 2-0 away. That was a poor game. But to cap it off, going to Forest 2-1, and when their players turned around and said we could see it in their eyes that they didn't want to be here, December was the worst month for Manchester United. And to cap it all, Champions League exit as well. So that was I can't remember a worse month for Manchester United, because some of them defeats, and the word, what some people use, humiliating season, that was humiliating. But it just goes on. It just goes on throughout the season. 14 defeats in the Premier League. That's not acceptable. I mean, my memory isn't the greatest of memories, but I can't remember, okay, ever watching 14 defeats in the league.
Yeah, we had that. Well, you always think, don't you, the second half of the season, they're going to perform a much better. Obviously, injuries, you've got to factor in that. Yeah. I think we won 4 games on the bounce. Was it around about February time? Then we hit that, well, we hit the brick wall with Fulham. Got beat there. For me, I think that was the real signal. I think that was the one that sort of changed a bit of mentality in that squad, me.
I think getting beat at home by Fulham, that was the sign that we wasn't going to do anything for the rest of the season. Like you say, you used the word brick wall. I just think that was the sign. It was City the following week, another defeat. But Fulham sort of said to me, and I remember Webby blowing up after the game.
Yeah, he did.
Because he could see,
right up.
Yeah, he could see what a lot of people see. That was it. Getting beat at home, that was the nail in the coffin as far as I was concerned for the rest of the season. How it was going to go after that, it was only one way, and it was downhill, and that's the way it's gone.
Yeah, just going to dive into the chat, get a couple of comments ringed off. Owen says, until we get Dan Ashworth in, how can there be a proper clear-out and a transfer strategy, ? And yeah, it's a big piece of the jigsaw, really. I think Dan Ashworth, in terms of the job role he's going to have at Manchester United. Look,
technically, right, he's not in, but the reality tells you that he's talking. He's only on gardening leave, doesn't stop him talking. So at the end of the day, I think Dan Ashworth there, and anything what's going to go on, right, doesn't need Dan Ashworth to sit in an office. I think Manchester United have got the plans all sorted. We discussed it yesterday. Everything has to be done. All the talking has to stop. People need to be moved out. People in the background need to be moved out. And the plans are there. Let's get it sorted. That's what we want. Dan Ashworth isn't necessarily need to be there in person to sort out the strategy going forward. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, Dan Fenton in the chat said, really, the only highlights of the season has been the likes of Mainu, Cambuala, Garnacho, etc.
I think you're right. You know, yeah. You're right. You're looking, it's potential. You're looking at potential, and you have to take things forward. I mean, this isn't a video we're doing just to like slag Man United down or anything like that. We're just pointing out how bad it is. But also, as a Man United fan, you have to look at the future and the potential's there with these young players. So that's a good thing. You just need proper professionals bringing in to work alongside them, and then professionals what have let them down, get him out.
Yeah, Alex says the games we lost at home against the lesser teams, in quotes, teams that, well, they're the games that cost us, but the Chelsea 4-3 was the one game that cost us the most. And to be honest with you, that game, you know, I'm trying to think throughout the season when we've actually been beat, but it was that game where I actually didn't want to come on camera because I couldn't speak.
No,
it actually left me like so deflated in the manner how we lost that game. I mean, and it was a huge game, that really, in terms of points and, you know, getting up the table.
I mean, lots of people can point to different games, different defeats where it was pivotal to United and sort of say that was the moment. But I go back to early days. I've just mentioned the Spurs game. We should have been out of sight by half-time. I mean, if anyone remembers the Bruno clear header, can't believe he missed that in the first half where the ball came over to him, the goal was open, no one near him, and he blasted it wide with his head. But the thing is, in September, you talk about momentum and all that, and that's what it is in football. You get momentum, you get something behind you, and you're on a surge. Now, I look at the Brighton and the Crystal Palace games in September at home. Remember that. It was at home, and we got beat by both of them. That just told you what was going on. They were poor defeats. And from that moment onwards, United was always scrambling to get back into something and sort of save the season. They were never from that moment looking like a team what was together, what could achieve things, what could challenge. They killed the season right there. And that was in September. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, MG Vincent says, to describe this season, I'd say it was a bottled season. We get 2 or 3 goals ahead, and then the opponents would turn it around, and we get massacred. Listen, you know, what comes to memory straight away, especially in the last few weeks, couple of months, is how many goals we have been conceding late on.
That's the bad.
You know, and that's the mentality of the players. You can also look at the manager and the coaching staff from the sidelines. Can they do a bit more, put a lot more input into that to make sure we're more compact? But a lot of these players, they need to take responsibility in a lot of them games that we've seen in, like, you know, getting it over the finishing line with the 3 points.
Yeah, you can't use excuses of injuries for the amount of goals and the sloppy goals we've conceded.
Yeah.
A lot of goals have been poor. What you have to look at is the effort and the team spirit and what was going on and the culture around these players and around the club. It was at rock bottom. We've seen it at Crystal Palace. I mean, that was a terrible defeat, 4-0 away. That was rock bottom. And you've just got to hope, and you mentioned like the young players before, of the potential coming through. And there's always hope in football, always hope in football. You know, don't even think that we're 100% going to get beat by City. No, there's hope in football. Seen it 1,000 times. But the thing is, that was the low point, and you've got to have hope that things will change in the summer. But for the full season, I mean, 14 games losses, I'll repeat it again, that's not acceptable. And for me, not to even be able to remember a worse season, that just tells you that the history of Man United, we're just right down there in the history stats.
Yeah, Martin says the Newcastle away game, which we have spoken about quite a few times, in terms of effort and commitment. You know, we could all see, you don't have to watch football for, you know, X amount of years to see them players that day. They just did not want to turn up whatsoever.
Well, I blew up on that because that was the nail in the coffin for me, for Marcus Rashford. There's a young lad there who was playing left back, and I can't pronounce his name at the moment, for Newcastle. And all Marcus Rashford did on that game was learn how to spell his name, because all he seen was his back, because the kid just went running down the line, and Marcus Rashford stood there and watched him time after time. And that game there, that Newcastle side was a poor Newcastle side. We watched Newcastle the other day. They were a very good side compared to that side. And United went there with no spirit.
Yeah.
Now, that was December. Yeah. And I just mentioned Newcastle, Bournemouth, West Ham, Forest. What was going on in December? Yeah. I just don't know what was going on. Maybe the atmosphere inside the football club was all about the takeover and coming in, who's going to get it, and when's he going to buy it, or is he going to buy half? Is he going to do this? Yeah. And I think all the speculation did have an effect. But it's not an excuse for effort on the pitch. Yeah. And that Newcastle game sort of summed it up in one way. These other games what summed it up, do you know what I mean? But there has been no bounce You know, we got a little bit of...
We said that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like we just said before, you know, we had like a 4-game winning run, you know, early in February. You know, could you call that a bounce after the Ineos, well, Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in as the co-chairman? But, you know, for me, it's like you go into the chat here, Lollipop says, I can't remember one game that we played well in from start to finish. And...
No, that's
I'm actually struggling to actually think back now to actually think of a game, and I think she's correct that there's not been one game. There's been highs. You know, you look at the recent one with Liverpool in the FA Cup. You know, I think that's the highlight of the season, so to speak, in terms of an actual game. You know, winning that, who it was against, and we've now got to the FA Cup final. But
that question there is, how can you expect a team to play well, start from finish, when they're a poor side? When they've got poor mentality, a poor attitude. Yeah. So there is no way you can point and look at and say, we played really well for 90 minutes in that game. No team what's poor plays for 90 minutes. So that's what we are. We've been poor. We've been very, very poor.
Yeah, Steph, cheers for keeping a tab on the likes and how many people are watching. I've actually lost the comment, but someone in the chat mentioned about top 4 next season and that not being realistic.
Well, no one's mentioned top 4.
No,
That's why.
just getting involved in the chat, and what's your thoughts on like
top 4?
Before the season's finished this season, should we even go there about doing a prediction for next season?
Well, I didn't do a prediction for this season. Because I just thought to myself, I don't know where we're going to go with this squad. But anyone thinking or even talking about European football, top 4 or anything like that, based on what you've seen this year, right, and I'll use that word again, people must be deluded if they think they've got a chance to succeed. You can only sort of look at this team, look at this club, after the summer when things have changed, and hopefully they will change. And if they don't change, then really you've got to say to yourself, this is a fight. This is a fight to get somewhere. They're not capable challenging for Champions League. You look at Chelsea, absolutely disgusting side, been so poor. They've turned it around. They'll be challenging. You would expect Newcastle to be challenging. Villa, look at Villa. Will they fade?
It depends what impacts this Champions League is going to have next season.
They will invest. Yeah. They will invest. And then you've always got your Liverpool, your Arsenal, your Man City. So anybody looking at a good run in the league to get into the Champions League, I think you've just got to take this at the start of the season, August and September, and then evaluate it. Because you go back to what I said at the beginning, September and August was poor for Man United, and then they were out of sight because the other teams were doing the business.
Obviously talking about games over the course of this season, but for me personally, I think the biggest disappointment was finishing bottom of that Champions League group stage, and I'm just wondering what effect and what mood that had on the players and in and around the club, and whether that was partly to blame, you know, for what we've seen this season. Not to blame it, to give the players an excuse at all, but you know, that was really, really disappointing when you look at the teams in the group. Yeah,
you look at that and it was disappointing, and it coincided getting knocked out of it with the December run. It was poor all round.
Yeah.
I look at the Champions League and I think to myself, a lot of decisions made there. What was wrong? Tactics, everything else, substitutes, people playing. But then you could say that about most games this season. So it's been poor. A tournament, that's what it was. The knockout stage, it was a tournament, and we just weren't capable. But early season form told you that. And going forward, if we'd have got out of it, we could have been in the Europa League. But even if we'd have stayed in the Champions League, we'd have got nowhere. So at the end of the day, we was 4th because we deserved 4th. We was rubbish.
Yeah, just diving back into the chat. Ant L says, it's not me this on a burner account, I promise.
Okay.
Do you only love your kids when they are good? No. You love them regardless and never stop believing in them. So obviously in terms of Manchester United.
Well, you know, you never stop believing because you always have to hope that things can turn round. You know, you can have bad periods. It could go on for years, which it is at the moment for Man United. But I've been through that period when I was a young lad, okay? And I always had hope. That was my team, cradle to grave. And that's what you have to do. You have to stick. That's your love. Manchester United is what you love, so you just stick with him and then hope that it can get better. And it normally does get better, but sometimes it takes longer than what you think.
Dan Fenton says this is a massive rebuild and it doesn't just happen overnight. Miss Bunny says I'm very sceptical, about what Sir Jim and Brailsford will do.
You always have, listen, the businessmen, simple as Sir Jim Ratcliffe, Ineos, it's all a business. Most owners now in the Premier League come in for it for business. Some of them come in for it to pass it on at a later date. Well, if they're doing that, then their eye is on the prize, which is money. It's an investment for some people. Sir Jim Ratcliffe says he's here for the love, he's not here for the money. Well, you have to be sceptical. And at the end of the day, over time, we'll see.
Just having a look in the chat, a few people mention Andre Onana. They just basically don't think he's up to it to be the Manchester United number one. I want to know your thoughts on that, but I've just seen a comment underneath mentioning Kovar, who went to Bayer Leverkusen. We were talking about him quite a bit in pre-season. He looked like he could have the attributes to be a number one goalkeeper, which he has gone over to Leverkusen, and I was impressed with him, especially with his footwork on the floor as well.
No, I was impressed with Kovar, no two ways about it. But Onana, look, you look at Onana and you have to look at what's in front of him, okay? If I had different people in front of me and I wasn't working with them on a regular basis, I wouldn't really have the confidence of them people. And at the end of the day, that whoever's been in front of Onana probably hasn't got the confidence in Onana. But that's the way it is. You have to have a settled side and you have to have a winning side. And where you have a winning side, you start at the back. And ours has been decimated. But I'm not making excuses. I don't want to make excuses, right? Because other teams have had injuries and everything. But Onana comes in, pressure was on him. Next thing you know, come end of August, come September, it was all carnage for him.
No, I totally agree. Any team that goes on really to just like challenge in the Premier League, they've always got a stable back four, haven't they? If you look even down the years, and
any winning side's got to have a back four. Any winning side, right? To win games, you have to stop conceding goals, and you start at the back. And ours has been poor this year for many different reasons, and we've just got to hope that it changes next year. Yeah,
Akash K says this transition will be mighty painful. Fans need to stick with it. You have mentioned a few times, you actually expect more chaos.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely chaos coming because there's some noses going to be pushed out of joint here. And people are going to get caught by surprise, right, that they're out, okay? Chaos, listen, there'll be chaos for a while, and I don't mean just this summer. I think you'll see a little bit of chaos during the season and a lot more the following summer because major changes are going to be made at every opportunity and it will create chaos. But we've got to stick with it. I'm not going to use the word process. It's a change and the change is coming.
Yeah, Keith Stitt in the chat says, we used to believe, but now we're hoping, and these players have killed that for many a year.
You believe when your team, right, is able to compete. You believe you can do things, okay? When you're a poor side like Manchester United, a mid-table side, right, of course you hope. You hope to get better. You hope that the players turn it around. You hope that the club turns it around. That's what happens when you're a mid-table side. You hope you don't go further down the table, right? You hope to get better, to go up. And believing, you can only believe when you see football in front of your eyes. And we've not seen football in front of our eyes.
Yeah, in the chat, Frogman says, how many deflected goals have we conceded recently that you can't actually blame on Onana?
That's,
you know what I mean?
Look, that's football.
It happens in every single match, doesn't it?
It happens in every single match. Too many people are blaming Onana for the goals conceded, and that's just not right. That's just not right. I'm sure he's one of the goalkeepers up at the top with the most amount of saves. So when you use stats, you can use them to whatever you want to use as an agenda. So stats, goalkeeper, Onana, good, bad. He's had problems, and it's not all of his own making. You've got to hope that we go back to that hope again, that he improves, but he will improve if we get a stable back four.
Stephanie Griffiths, cheers for keeping a tab on the likes and how many people are watching. Going on to the game, though, against Brighton, What you're expecting is this going to be a trial run for players to cement the places in that FA Cup final? A lot of people out there, especially on the channel over the last few days, are talking about the left wing, right wing positions with Ahmad, Rashford, Garnacho.
Not so much as a trial. I think Erik ten Hag will already know who will play in there if they're fit. I think a trial is the wrong word. I think there's players there know they're not in the cup final. I think they're on the way. Some of them are going to be dropped. This game here against Brighton, I think it's more of an exercise of getting through, getting the fitness up there, getting a bit of commitment, and also avoiding injuries. That's how I see this game. But players playing for the cup final place, not a chance. I think it's already nailed on who he's got in mind, barring injuries.
Yeah, no, good point that, to be fair. Looking at it that way, you should know, really. Not just a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. You know, if you listen to Sir Alex Ferguson in his books, in his old interviews, etc., he always had a plan going weeks ahead into the Premier League season, looking at cup games, etc. So you'd expect him to have it near enough nailed on.
Yeah, but every plan gets hammered, doesn't it? Gets destroyed
through injuries.
Through injuries. Yeah. So if Erik ten Hag did have a plan, or has got a plan for the cup final, then that just can go all pear-shaped, you know. And it doesn't need a football match to get injuries, as we've seen. How many injuries have been affecting this club, right? When United aren't even playing. Training. I've never known so many injuries occurring in training. It's been a joke, to be honest with you. But, you know, that's got to change. And we need to hear and see that change.
What's your thoughts on if you finish 7th? You know, a lot of people out there have got their own opinions, and rightly so. You see, is it more of a humiliation, us going into that Conference League, than not being in Europe at all?
I think when you use the word humiliation, I use it in this manner. For the size and the stature of Manchester United, to end up scrambling, and I mean scrambling, into that Europa Conference, that's humiliation. As a Manchester United fan, you'd want European football, and when you're in it, you want to win it. But as a humiliation for the size of the club and its fan base and everything, we expect more as fans. But if we're in it, we're in it. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't want to be in it as a fan. But at the end of the day, we've always got a week later and we've got an opportunity to get in that Europa League.
Yeah, Kenny says I'd rather win the FA Cup and get in the Europa, of course.
Yeah.
To be honest, I wouldn't mind us not being in Europe at all. And yeah, there's like I say, it's a bit of a divide down the middle, really, with fans, isn't it?
If I had a choice, I would prefer to stay 8th and not be in Europe at all, okay? But the choice is here. We're playing Manchester City, okay? I look at the rebuild, I look at what's going on, the changes and everything, and I think when I look at Arsenal, Arteta finished 8th in his second season, right? Avoided being in Europe, the distraction. Now look where Arteta and Arsenal are, and that's because they were able to rebuild and get it together, right, with a European free season. They just played Saturday, Sunday, Saturday. That's what they were doing with a few Wednesday games thrown in. They were out of the cup competitions, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, early, right? They had it sorted. So you can see what happens when you're given space and time to make changes and everything. So from that point of view, you have to say, if United just finish 8th and don't qualify for Europe, then it's not all doom and gloom, because Arteta was being screamed at to get out of the club.
Yeah.
Every Arsenal fan, there's not one who didn't say, get Arteta out, this is humiliating. Well, we're going through the same thing, but there is light at the end of the tunnel when you see what can be done. Yeah. So there is hope.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with them words you've just said. Damien says, love the show as always, lads. You guys have kept us going throughout this season. Here's hoping to things getting sorted in the summer. I think, yeah, much appreciated for watching as well, mate, getting involved like everyone else out there. It is really appreciated. But I think it's going to take more than 1, 2, maybe even 3 summer transfer windows. You need the football people in place to start making these decisions. And like someone said before about Dan Ashworth, sooner the better for me.
Yeah,
get him
in. He'll be there this summer. And like I say, he'll be talking. Look, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, I've seen some good news today in Indonesia, they're launching a new credit card. So there's always good news for Man United. Obviously, it won't affect what's going on the pitch, but there's a bit of good news if you live in Indonesia. A new credit card. I can't think of anything good, right? What's here now and what's coming. I've just got to watch and hope that good things are coming.
What, you're going to order one? You might be bad news when you see the interest rate on it.
Probably, typical United, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah, it is. I'd just like to thank... Have you gone over everything? Anything you want to add before we go?
No. I just look at the games. And like I say, December was the killer. September just told you where we was going to be. Fighting, chasing, and then really it all sorted itself out with the home defeat against Fulham. That just told you we was not going anywhere. And do we deserve European football from a league position? I don't think so. Not good enough. You know, if one or two teams have come at us, they might have even overtook us in 8th. So at the end of the day, 8th is what we are, mid-table team, and you have to look at that throughout the summer and say, right, we have to build on that and hope that the change will get us better. But European football next season, qualifying for it in the top 4, top 5, I very, very much doubt it. This is a long haul.
Salford 6, Liverpool away day. The stream you fellas did was a highlight of the season. Yeah. The away day when we was doing the video for your match reaction. That was actually pretty funny, to be honest with you. The amount of Scousers that were just the arm's length away from us, all listening to us. Obviously, we've got proper Manc voices as well.
Yeah, Liverpool away was a great day for us. Traumatic in some ways, but what a great day. Them Scousers just could not handle us, and they were quite happy to see the back of us. But hey, that's the rivalry. Luckily, it was all jovial, and we got home safe and sound.
Yeah, we did in the end. Just like to thank everyone for joining us today. Also, as well, we got well over that 70,000 subscriber mark. I feel like we need to give you something back before the end of the season finishes, that FA Cup final. So keep an eye out on the channel, and we will be giving you some updates on some news in what we're looking to do on that day, the FA Cup final. So keep tuned for that one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again straight after the game tomorrow.
Thank you very much.